Welcome back. Peace and love. Hope everybody's staying blessed. So, shunning. Lately, I've had this issue of shunning come through my life. I'm not necessarily being shunned per se, but people close to me are. They're dealing with this. And, when we look at this issue, I think it's important to separate the idea of in life, sometimes you have to go no contact with people. For your own health and well-being, sometimes it's in your best interest to go no contact with some people. If you may find that a person doesn't respect who you are or doesn't respect your race, your religion, your family, it's in your interest to separate yourself from a person like this or these type of people, whether it's a group or whatever. And funny enough, I rarely would ever watch this guy, but on Sunday night in a primetime spot, there's Joel Osteen. So about a few weeks back, I'm watching him and he's talking about pruning season and how sometimes in life you have to prune. In order to grow, you got to prune your plants, just like the plants back here. They got to be pruned in order to grow nicely. So for us to grow, sometimes there's people that you have to make that decision to say, you know what, I'm pruning this person or these people out of my life. And it could be friends, sometimes even family. But when we talk about shunning, this is real different. And I think it's important to establish that when we talk about shunning, we have a group or a person in a group, in this case a religious group, where they've decided to judge a person, and their way of disciplining this person is to say that their friends, their family, their acquaintances are to shun them. And this is messed up. I got a problem with it. And it's messed up on many levels. First of all, when we look at shunning, like for example, versus deciding as an adult to go no contact with a person or with a group, with shunning, it's a form of discipline. So as an adult, you're practicing the discipline of another adult, which just on its face is ridiculous. But when we look at the whole thing deeper, we realize that shunning is high-level manipulation. And I understand that. I understand that typically the people that are doing it, sometimes they think it's for this person's benefit. They legitimately think that. And I understand that. But the problem is you aren't standing on your own feet if you're deciding to shun somebody else for the reasons that they've been judged by a religious group based off of a teaching or a book. And in my life, I've had experiences where people have shunned me. I used to work for a guy on a regular basis, yearly, doing snow and ice removal. And whether I was part of the religious group or not, it seemed that it was cool. We were still working together for many years. And then all of a sudden, one day, the main contract that we had disappears. And, as he's telling me that the contract disappears, he also throws in, I think it's best that because of my personal choices to separate from the same religious beliefs as this individual, that he doesn't want to associate, and that the work is really for the people in the congregation. And, so he puts his little religious stamp of bullshit on the whole situation. And then, he decided to shun me, and that's okay. Was it his personal decision to do that, or was he making that decision because it's an instructive of the group? I don't know, but I still think it's ridiculous, and it's manipulation at the highest level. And the truth of the matter is, let's call it what it is. It's pimping, because what is pimping? Pimping is where a person uses the art of words to manipulate somebody into selling their flesh. And in this case, we have a group using the art of words to manipulate a person or persons or a family or family members, parents, children, into selling their souls, really. That's what's for sale in this case, and it's terrible. It's sad. It's shameful to see a situation where you have a parent or a child that will choose to not have contact with their family members simply because of a teaching of a group, right? And the next question, obviously, that comes up is, well, who's really responsible? Because many people that are doing this, as I said before, are practicing it because they think it's for the person's benefit, maybe because they're obligated, because if they don't, or if they don't do the shunning like they're told to, that now maybe they're going to come under some sort of discipline. But who's really responsible? Well, you're responsible. I'm responsible. Anybody who decides to participate in that kind of behavior is responsible. Whether somebody on a platform or whether it's instructions coming out of a book or a magazine, you are responsible for your behavior. We are all responsible for our own behavior and choices. And it's disturbing for me to see people who are willing to live their lives and sacrifice some of those closest relationships and bonds that you can have in life, all because they're instructed to do so, right? I know I have friends who, she said, oh, well, the elders, they told my brother that he shouldn't talk to me, I mean, so here you have a group of men literally using the segregation of families as a disciplinary tactic. And the saddest part about it is, that they're using the scriptures, which the scriptures in so many cases in history have been used to manipulate people. But in this case, they're using the scriptures to try and justify this kind of behavior and saying that this is godly kind of behavior, when in actuality nothing could be farther from the truth. This is godly behavior to shun your own flesh and blood. Now, as I said before, if you are being abused or if you are being hurt in some way and it's deteriorating your quality of life, it's okay to say, hey, I don't want to deal with you anymore. I don't want to have any part of you or your group, whoever this person is, if they cannot respect you as an individual, respect your space, your religion, your rights. But there's a big difference between that and somebody just being sheeple enough to shun flesh and blood. And I recommend that some of the people who try and lean on the scriptures for this take a real hard look at the scriptures you're leaning on, because I had somebody who, for example, wasn't able to come to my wedding, someone close to me, and the reason they gave is that an individual who was disfellowshipped from their religion was going to be there and they just couldn't be, and they referenced that, oh, well, the Apostle Paul said that these ones who are separated from the congregation, we shouldn't even share a meal with these ones, right? So it's ironic to me that these people are leaning on the teachings from someone called the Apostle Paul, who just so happened to, before he magically decided to change his ways, was overseeing murders of people, right? Didn't Paul oversee the murder of Stephen, right? Was he disfellowshipped? Well, they say, oh, well, he had some blindness or whatever. I mean, come on, like, this is who you're gonna use as an excuse to not deal with your own flesh and blood, right? I mean, when you claim to be Christian or you claim to live by the scriptures and you look at the example of the one called Jesus, it's a little hypocritical to look at the example set by that character in the Bible and say that you follow him, and then you have this guy Paul who says, yeah, segregate yourself from people, and so you lean on that and say, oh, well, that's okay. And then another excuse that comes forward is, well, it's biblical, shunning is biblical. That's one that somebody said to me, you have to understand shunning is biblical. Well, stoning of virgins was, or if they were found not to be a virgin, was biblical. Gang rape was biblical if you look in Judges. You want to know about all the things that were biblical? And so to say that just because something might have been in the Bible or supposedly biblical, and then that makes it okay, you know, that's ridiculous. We got to lean on our own principles, right? Just as a point of character and a point of principle, we should have enough integrity to be able to rise above something and not be so sheeple as to use the excuse, well, it's biblical, you know. So these are my thoughts on this. Stop the shunning. Yeah, I'm down with that. Stop the shunning, you know. Sometimes you got to separate from people, but that should be your decision that you're making for your own interest, only in the event that you absolutely have to, not because you're being instructed to do so from a group. So this is what it is for today. Hope everybody's staying blessed. Peace and love. Like, subscribe. I'm out.